That's okay. Just waiting. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Father's Day special of as we talk about mental health awareness. It's Men's Mental Health Awareness Week. It ends today. And today I'm joined by Felix Ndebele. You may recognize him from our Mental Health Awareness Week conference that we had in May. So for those who are new to the channel, my name is Joanna Daniel. I'm a counselor and an author. I live in Wales, UK, and I'm founder of Wounds to Scars. We work with adult survivors of childhood trauma and women who experience abuse. We do retreats, conferences, training courses, and we do this platform here where we talk live about different subjects around mental health and things underlining things that impacts our mental health. Today, Felix is going to talk about generational trauma and how we can break the cycle. I'm going to let Felix introduce himself and go right into the presentation. Whether you're joining us live or watching the replay, welcome. You can put your questions or any insights that you have in the chat. I will be happy to interact with you. Over to you, Felix.
Thank you, Joanne. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Felix Ndebele. I am a cognitive behavioral therapist working at the moment with the NHS. And I also do private work. And I've got my own private counseling company called Hands of Sympathy. And I have a nursing background that's qualified as a mental health nurse in 2007. I've worked with people experiencing mental health, inpatient in the wards, and also in the community. So mental health is a special subject that really am passionate about. Having come from my original country in Zimbabwe, where mental health was not talked about, or people with mental health were kind of pushed really to the peripherals of the society. It felt like if somebody had a mental health problem, they were the other, and society didn't want to associate with. So part of today's presentation will also talk about those traditions, where we come from as human beings, and how we could change some of our perceptions so that we can embrace mental well-being and mental health difficulties and grow really from that. So the topic today says generational trauma. So, and we are looking at ways in which, how does that impact on us? Where does that come from? So we're looking at the factors that contribute to that. And we are also going to be touching on topics on emotional fluency and emotional intelligence. And we are going to look at how self-compassion can help us to kind of break the cycle, and also tapping into empathy. And we are going to look at what we call adverse childhood experiences that underpin most of our people's mental health difficulties. So it will be a pleasure to get some feedback from our people, because I normally say, even though I've worked in mental health field for 16 years, I wouldn't call myself a specialist, because I only know things from the therapist or from the nurse's point of view. It would be nice in such sort of forums to get the perspective of the carers, people who live with somebody who struggle with mental health, or the person who is undergoing these sort of difficulties themselves. So together, we will sort of make this discussion live, and we will get lots from it. So I look forward to your contributions. Thank you. So am I okay to share the presentation now, Dawn?
You are, Felix, yes.
Okay. So with Zoom, once I put my presentation on, unfortunately, I can't see anything. So if you could keep me in check and
I will.
I'm still
Yeah.
on.
I,
All
I
right.
will. I'll be following along on YouTube and on in Zoom to see where anybody have any questions or the comments.
Yeah. So if you could stop me whenever there is a question, because I won't be able to tell at
Yeah,
that point.
sure.
All right. So I'm sharing my screen at the moment. So there is the topic. So we may be asking ourselves, what is generational trauma? So I've got a description, but before we look at generational trauma, maybe it will make sense for us just to try and understand what is trauma. So generally, when we talk about trauma, we talk about an emotional response. In order for somebody to experience trauma, there has to be a trigger, and that trigger has to be perceived by that individual either as a threat or danger. In most of times, when we are looking at classic trauma, we are looking at the threat to life. When there is a threat to life, a human beings, we experience what we call the fight or flight mechanism is activated. At that point, when it's activated, we want to run and escape the perceived danger, or in some circumstances, we want to fight so that we can survive. But unfortunately, in other circumstances, depending on the enormity of the danger, we sometimes froze. So generally, we are caught up in this vicious circle. So I'll just paint sort of a picture in words for those who watch Discovery a channel, and if you've seen a clip of animals hunting other animals sort of in the game park, if you could picture a lion heading towards a herd of buffaloes or antelopes, when the animals see a lion coming to attack, this fight or flight mechanism is going to be triggered. And in such cases, the animals would run away. The reason why I'm bringing this, I just want to bring a difference between animals and us. Once the animals run away from the danger and the danger is past, normally this fight or flight system resets itself. You can see that an animal is running away in 5 minutes, and then 5 minutes afterwards, it is grazing or it is drinking as if there was no any danger. But unfortunately, for us human beings, we struggle to sort of switch off from this system of perceiving danger. And I'm just going to quickly touch on the physical sort of parts of the brain that are associated with danger. I'm not going to spend much time on this because most people it's very confusing sort of trying to talk about this. But whenever there is a trauma or a trauma response in the brain, there is a part of the brain called the amygdala, which is the fear center in the brain. At this point, the amygdala becomes active, and the hippocampus and the hypothalamus, they go offline. So when we talk about memories, the hippocampus is responsible for storing all the memories safely in the filing cabinet. For example, if you are studying maybe a degree or whatever level, you would read and the stuff will be stored away nicely. And then during the exam, you are able to retrieve that stuff from the sort of a memory folder. But unfortunately, when somebody is experiencing trauma, the files are just jumbled up. They are not stored away. That's why most of the times people will respond as if the danger is happening here and now. So that is the background, or just the basis of trauma. But we're not going to focus on classic PTSD. We are going to be focusing on the generational trauma, which buys into the presentation of trauma. So the question is, what is generational trauma? So generational trauma can occur when a group of individuals is subjected to traumatic experiences like war, natural disasters, racism, sexism, oppression. This can stem from us maybe witnessing sort of anything that is not pleasant to people's life. For example, sexual assault, or living in an environment where it is really chaotic, maybe parents abusing drugs, or parents are fighting. So I'm just going to put up a slide here, which kind of sort of tries to explain some of the experiences we may have experienced, because maybe some of us, we may say we are Christians, we come from an environment whereby in our families, our parents never fought or in front of us, but maybe we could see just mom being unhappy. But I've just put a slide which kind of screams out. So this is what we mean by the ACEs, the advanced childhood condition. If you can see, the woman is pregnant. So there is a child on the way. That child is going to be affected also, even when they're in mom's belly, by the stress levels in this kind of relationship. And then you've got a little lad there who is trying to calm down his parents, and all this happening. And you've got a little girl there happening to witness this sort of discourse between mom and dad. If this was a recurring problem, and then this environment now becomes sort of abusive, and the children are part of this environment, this is going to impact on them. So Chambers says that what you experience in childhood and how you grow up have a huge implications on how you are as an adult. So whatever we experience has a huge impact. So I'm just going to digress a little bit and just paint a picture of where I come from. I come from Zimbabwe myself, and I come from a tribe called the Ndebele people, and we branched off from South Africa under Chaga. If you know King Chaga, he's celebrated as the great nation builder. So most of the men from my tribe, we associate our masculinity as a sign really of being strong, and we tap into that. And imagine being brought up in that kind of a social fabric as a boy, growing up in a family of 7 girls, 6, all up together with 6, and being the only boy in the family. And growing up, my dad, he wasn't an abusive guy. He was very sort of a chilled man, but he always put emphasis on that I was a boy and I was not a girl. My siblings would soon be married off, or they will have men who would look after them. But as a man, I needed to be strong. I needed to work hard and ensure that actually I'm stable. So now I am talking about pressure, which is sometimes interwoven into our traditions. And as a child, growing up with that kind of pressure in your head, sometimes it can have a huge impact when you grow up. And from my culture also, and I think most Black people would sort of experience that. And having come into UK and my son plays football, I've just realized that it is not just a Black people's thing. Even my white sort of colleagues whose children play football with my son, they will also emphasize that boys don't cry or big boys don't cry. So if you are a man growing up from early childhood, you are taught to internalize really distress, to internalize hurt, because if you cry, you present yourself as a big girl. No man wants to be seen as a girl. I'm not being sexist, but I'm just talking about how life presents in the sort of a sphere of men. So growing with that, it kind of puts a lot of pressure on us men. And if we are to look at the Black people themselves, because I can talk really from that point of view, because I can share into those experiences. So as a Black person, crying is a sign of weakness. So we have to try to be strong. And we come up with such statements as, the more you cry, the more unwell you become. And from my community, we have got an idiom which says that if you are a man, your tears, this is a literal translation, a man's tears are not supposed to be visually seen. They're supposed to fall in your chest, which means, again, you have to bottle the feelings. You have to internalize the feelings. But if we look at our history as men, if we look at our fellow brethren who are coming from the Caribbean, you would have contended with racism, you would have contended with slavery, which kind of put pressure on you. So there is a need for you to fight there. And even those who've come to countries like UK, or you've gone to US, where people seem to champion the rights of people, you will find that as a Black person, you're still fighting racism. There are still a lot of isms. But when you come home, you are expected to be a father, to be a husband who will be able to care for the family. So that kind of raises a question as to how can we be able as men to perform those duties when we are told all the time to internalize our head, to internalize our feelings. It's like the language to express ourselves, it's never given. And what are the dangers of us as a society to always emphasize that men need to internalize our head? So I've got a slide here which tries to talk about the dangers of internalizing trauma or the head. So if you are a child raised up in this sort of situations, sometimes you want to express yourself, but there is shame or there is a stigma that you are going to be seen as a weak person. So in that circumstance, people start to utilize substances sometimes as a way of numbing our feelings and be able to cope. Other people, they turn into food as a way of coping, which itself leads into obesity. At the moment, there is a pandemic of depression, anxiety, and panic because we are all overwhelmed by our emotions and we are not able to cope. Amongst men, the rate of suicide is very high. Again, because we don't have a channel, or we don't know how to talk about our head. And also research that has been carried out now, it links diseases like heart disease, cancer, and stroke with sort of internalized trauma. But the bit that I want to sort of emphasize really, it's more around the difficulties in regulating our emotions. So when we talk about regulating our emotions, I want to paint a picture of a toddler. Anybody with a child, or anybody who has a family member with a child, if you think about a toddler, we're talking about a child who's at 3, 4 years or 2, who has not, who doesn't have a developed language. Sometimes they are frustrated. All they do is to chuck the toys out. They stamp their feet, they cry, because that child has got no language to express themselves. Most of the times, when we go through a generational trauma, it's constantly, it's there, it's ever never ceasing. We tend to lose the language to express ourselves. Either we think, what is the point of talking, because nobody's going to listen? But the danger there is you grow up, you become a father yourself, and you are supposed to look after your partner or your wife, or you're supposed to look after children. How then are you going to be able to look after other people when you are not able to manage your own emotions? That is where the problem now comes in. And this is where the crux of our discussion is going to sort of hinge on: how do we look after other people when we can't look after ourselves? I know that when we talk about that, it is depressing, because it looks like all the odds are stacked against men, and not forgetting that actually there are some women who have to look after the children on their own because the man has left them. I know this is a men's program, but we need to acknowledge that some of the boys who will grow up to be men, they will be nurtured and looked after by a single parent. So again, when you are listening to this, you might start to think, what is the point? My children, I'm not able to provide this and that, so which means they are going to grow up and be traumatized individuals who can't even look after their families themselves. The point is, there is hope. We can break the cycle, but breaking this cycle, it is not a straightforward thing. It is complex, because first we have to get in touch with our inner selves. We have to look at our traditions of survival and ask ourselves, really, is the danger as big as we perceive in our heads? What can we do to sort of help ourselves and to help those that are around us? So this is when we start to have this cultural shift as a society. Instead of championing the generation of strong men who don't cry, men who don't talk about their feelings, there is a need for us as a society to start to champion men who are compassionate, men who are in touch with their inner feelings. So there is a need for us to start to cultivate what we call emotional intelligence. Somebody may ask, what is emotional intelligence? So when we talk about emotional intelligence now, we are referring to the ability to be able to manage both our own emotions and also to manage the emotions of other people. So you will find that in business, most of the managers are asked to go through this training to sort of cultivate or develop their emotional sort of intelligence. Because if you are easily getting dysregulated as a leader, of which most fathers are, and most brothers are to our siblings, and if dad maybe is departed or dad is no longer able to lead the families, it comes back to us. So we are leaders anyway. So it's very important for us to have an awareness of our feelings and to be able to understand the emotions of those around us. So as men, there is a need for us to have what we call safe spaces. What is a safe space? This is a space that maybe based on the environment where we were born, we were never given a space to be able to talk about how we feel. For example, those who come from African background, you would know that your parents are always right. Even when they are not right, sometimes you don't have a room to even highlight that, no, things were not that way, because you get a slap or you are shouted at. So at that point, we learn to kind of internalize. But it is nice that now we are having these discussions. We give each other a space to talk about how we are feeling, to talk about how we are impacted by things that are happening at work, things that are happening within our families, the challenges that we are experiencing with our children. Sometimes it could be even our physical health. We are struggling with physical health, but we can't talk. And research at the moment says that men don't seek help. But how do we seek help even for physical health problems when we are constantly told that holding it in is a sign of strength? So we need to have forums whereby we will be able to talk and knowing that somebody is going to listen to us, where we can have a one-to-one open heart and where we can be vulnerable and maybe sometimes get encouragement. Most of the times men don't want to talk because I don't want to be told do A, B, C, D. Sometimes all I need is a space for us to talk. So I'm going to pause at this moment and see if there are any questions that have cropped up, Diane. Sorry, Joanne.
There's no questions so far, Felix, but one of the things there's so many things that you've said that I think is so pivotal. And as you were talking, I wondered if we could, I don't know if you could answer this, when you talked about Black men and not being able to cry and doing the work that you do, I wonder how many do you see a lot of them on that side of the mental health world where they're getting they're getting treatment because they've not sought therapy, they've not accessed safe spaces. Are they more on the side where they're the medical side where they're having to take medication? Do they even show up there?
Okay, thank you very much for raising that point, Joanne. When I started working in mental health, I was working in the wards, so which is the acute side.
Yeah.
If you went into any of those wards, you will find that there's a disproportionate representation of Black people to white people or people from Asian community. There is more men coming to seek help when the problem is extremely debilitating, so that actually either when they come to the hospital, they are forced under a mental health act. So they have forced treatment because at that point, they are really struggling. And if you go into the prisons or the forensic mental health services, again, you will find that there is a disproportionate number of greater people from the Black community than any other communities.
Yeah.
Why? Because we don't seek help early. I've been working as a CBT therapist since 2009, and I'm not exaggerating this. I can count maybe up to about 50 people that I've ever come across that are from sort of a Black community. That's how many years? We're talking almost 16 years.
Yeah.
I've seen about 50 sort of Black men coming to sort of seek help for things like depression, anxiety. And again, if you sit down with a man at that point and try and understand what is the motivation, what motivated them to come and seek help, most of the times you would find out that either they've got an ultimatum, the wife or the partner is going to leave them
And
if
they
they
have to
don't sort
come.
themselves out,
Mm-hmm.
or social services and other statutory bodies, they are now involved because sort of either the children have gone to school and they've said actually there is a problem at home, or the wife has raised concerns. So that is the time that actually most of the men seek problems. Or some of them actually, when they come to us, they are having problems at work. It's either they are now going through disciplinary action, and that's when they realize that maybe I need to sort of seek help. And most of the times, and I'm talking from experience again, when you are working with men, especially Black men, at that point, when they are coming to see you because something is about to break, it is hard for them
Yeah.
to buy into the therapeutic sort of a model or framework, because one, they don't have the volition to come and fix something. It's either they have to come and tick the box. But saying that, also, there are some men who have come and that I've worked with who have really got the good outcome, because after some time, when we sit together and when we talk about our experiences, and when I'm working with Black people, I normally sort of make myself really look vulnerable and model to my patients how it feels like to be a man and acknowledge that maybe something is difficult,
Yeah.
of which really is one of the things that actually maybe we need to talk about as men again here, as to we need more men,
We
especially
do.
Black men, going into fields like nursing, going into fields like counseling, or sort of psychology to offer therapies. Because if somebody, I spoke about empathy, if you are talking to somebody that you can empathize with and get into their shoes and see things from their point of view, it is more helpful, really.
Yeah, it is. Can you speak to I was at a church, Felix, and during the question and answer session in the evening, there's a gentleman that got really upset because he said the tribe that he grew up in, he was trained to not cry.
Yes.
And he was very upset that I thought that that was traumatic, or, that men needed help and support. And he felt that he didn't need any because he was trained to not cry. And the tragedy for me is he couldn't see how that might mean that he wouldn't be available to his son, that he wouldn't be able to show empathy to anybody else, and that he wasn't able to be even in touch with his own emotions, his own feelings. Because if you're trained to not cry, how do you know when things are difficult and what to do? And so can you speak to that, please? If somebody grew up in that kind of, and I know you addressed it a little bit earlier, if somebody grew up in that space where they're trained to not cry, how do then they allow themselves to be, what's the process for them to allow themselves to be vulnerable enough to even listen to us now or to admit that they need therapy because they're trained to push through.
Thank you, Joanne. And again, that came up in one of the discussions yesterday when I was leading out a discussion with men in one of our churches here in Birmingham. And somebody asked me, where in the Bible does it even say that men should cry?
Oh, wow. Does it need to be in the Bible?
No. I'm just saying that because, again, this is the question that I was asked because it felt like I was trying to emasculate men. And I think the person that you were talking to, they felt like you were trying to emasculate them by saying,
yeah,
you now need to be in touch with your emotions. You need to cry, because all along I was taught I shouldn't cry, because crying to him is synonymous to being emasculated. So
a
you're
sign
taking
of
away
weakness, many tell me.
yeah, you're taking away that masculine sort of side of a man. But I'm going to answer that. But I just want us to draw all the men. And I know that maybe we've got a mixed sort of audience here, since it's also streamed on YouTube. But I'm just going to try. And if we look at Jesus Christ, for me, there is no strong person that I've ever come across in the world or in sort of in my life than Jesus Christ. But we know that when Mary lost her brother Lazarus and they called Jesus, Jesus Christ is recorded in the Bible that Jesus
He
wept.
cried. That's it. That's true.
So if Jesus Christ could cry, because we're going back to emotional intelligence, he, in his human nature, he could attune to the distress that Mary and other people associated Lazarus were going through. And Jesus could empathize with them. And at that moment, the overriding emotion was sorrow, because there was loss. He cried. For me, that is really a sign, or to say that it is okay to cry. And when we are crying, or when we are acknowledging that actually somebody is in pain or we are in pain, it's not a sign of weakness, but it is a sign of strength. So if I don't know how pain feels like, how am I going to be able to help somebody who is in pain?
That's true. You can't. You cannot. You won't be able to feel with them.
There is a slide that I've put up here. It says that sometimes there is a need for us to have a change of vocabulary. Maybe, for example, not seeing crying as a weakness, but seeing crying or seeing talking about emotions as being in tune with our emotions rather than being awake. Tony Robbins says that the quickest way to learn a new language is to immerse yourself in the environment where that language is sort of primarily spoken. For example, as Black people, as tribal people, our traditions don't celebrate that. If my dad was alive, and I think if I was doing this talk and he was listening to me, I think he would be sitting there thinking, what have I done wrong in bringing up this young man? So what I'm doing now, it's something that I have had to learn myself. Coming from Zimbabwe at the age of 22, having to go into nursing, doing a job that primarily was identified as a feminine job. So I had to go through the first hurdle of dealing with what was perceived as shame. And then when I started working as a therapist, I told most people who have ever listened to me talk, and even my colleagues, that the first patient was a lady who was going through divorce. She came in the session, she cried for 10 minutes, 10 good minutes, and I'm not exaggerating, I didn't know what to do because I had never been exposed to so much distress. I sat there, and if she went on for another 5 minutes, I'm not exaggerating this, I would have left the room and go and ask for somebody to help me, because at that point, I had come to the end of really, I just couldn't comprehend what was going on there. So I had to learn myself to tolerate that distress. And what I'm hearing here, trying to answer your question, that man you spoke to, they have got a fear that maybe once they start to get in touch with their feelings, they would not be able to regulate themselves. So they have to put this facade that I'm okay. And I'm wondering if the same man or any man who wants to be strong was struggling with prostate cancer or any other cancer and they were in pain,
what would they do?
what would they do?
But as you said that they're not able to, the fear of connecting with emotions and the fear of being overwhelmed and not able to connect. And I just think as we talk about generational cycle, how that's passing on a message to our sons because they've not seen men express emotions or crying or talk about feelings, and those so they feel it's the same, this is what we do, because and then we're passing it on to another generation.
Yeah. So I've just put up a slide here. I'm just going to try and read it verbatim just to make sense of it. So it says that if trauma can be passed on from generation to generation, the argument here is that healing as well from this man or maybe to his child, it can also be taught from generation to generation. So at this point, what this brother needs really is a group of other men. And I'm going to go back to a slide that I jumped. Last year, I think it was around about April time, I attended Men's Fellowship Day, which was arranged by NEC Men's Department, led by Pastor Hewitt and Pastor Douglas, the guys that actually I really respect these two gentlemen in terms of creating safe space for men to come and talk about how they feel. They invited one gentleman, I've since forgotten his name. He's going around the country raising awareness, especially amongst the Black people, about prostate cancer. What that man said, it really touched me. He said that coming from the Caribbean sort of a background, there are some things that are no, of which myself, as well as an African man, I could subscribe to. He said that he could feel that his body was not well, but he couldn't allow himself to go to the doctors to seek help. And it came to a point whereby he could tell that the symptoms that he had were symptoms of a prostate cancer. But again, there was a barrier here. As a Black man, thinking, if I'm going to go and consult for prostate cancer, we all know the treatment that we have to get. The first screening, you will have to have an internal examination. And the Black man being touched in that area is a no. He said to us, he had to go through a lot of self-examination. Do I put my pride that I want to be a strong man and die in 6 months or in 4 months and leave my children without a father, leave my wife without a soulmate? Or do I allow myself to sort of transcend these traditions and cultural barriers that are stopping us from accessing help. He said that he made a wise decision, of which he was examined, and then now it was decision time. Do I go through the operation and have my prostate removed? And again, this is another big call, because us as men, we associate the bedroom again with our masculinity.
Yes.
So the danger of having the prostate removed, it means that you can function in that area, which starts to question your manhood or to question your masculinity. And again, he says, I had to go through a lot of soul searching, and I made a wise decision, and he said, I'm going to have my prostate removed. At the moment, he said, I'm shameful about this. I wear continent pads, but I have lived now another, I think, if I'm not mistaken, another 9 to 10 years from the time when he consulted and he allowed himself to be examined, and then he had the treatment removing his prostate. So Black men will come at a later stage seeking for help, something that could have been slowed down or maybe could have been treated if we had allowed ourselves to be vulnerable and seek help. Some of the problems that we are experiencing or we will experience could be averted.
You know, I find that extremely sad. And I just want to say that there are 3 people on watching, and we affirm the people who are on now and the ones who are going to watch this later, that, you know, the interest that you have in this subject and topic, and the learning that I know that will come from this. We, as I'm speaking for this as a woman, as a woman, as a wife, as a mom, as a sister, as a daughter, that we love you and we want you to get support. We want you to get help. We want you to be able to get help early and not wait until things are at acute stages before you get help. Because, you know, I want my husband to not only get help from me and for the children, but for him, because I want him to be all that God wants him to be. I want him to fulfill his potential. I want him to use his gifts and talents. I want him to contribute to this world in amazing ways, and I know ways that I know that he can contribute to this world. And I want that for my brothers too, blood brothers and brothers who are watching this, that you have so much to give to this world, and we have so much to benefit from you, that if you, though, are not able to, if you're not well, you're not able to do it. You will not be able to do it. So I hope that you'll be able to, after watching this, if you haven't yet seek support, that you will reach out for support. As we're saying that, Felix, I just want to say, where can people find you? How can they get in touch with you if they'd like to work with you?
At the moment, I'm working on my sort of website, but I can sort of put my phone number if people want. So let me just put up a slide. So at the moment, it will be via the phone number.
Right. Okay.
But I am in the process of working through the website. It happens that actually the name that I've chosen for my company is sort of a name that is also used by another sort of organization that I belong to. So I had first to clear sort of with the organization before I put out my sort of
Sure.
yeah, because
Your
there was
website.
going to be sort of a conflict of interest. But everybody understands that the reason why I chose Hands of Sympathy, I'm coming from an area whereby as a man you have to be strong, and when you're sort of, for me, when I'm visualizing being strong, you have to be comfortable with being handled rough. But in my journey as a therapist, and in my journey now as a father, and in my journey as a man, I'm trying to sort of have those tender hands, the hands of sympathy, whereby people coming to me, I can be able to empathize with them, and I can also be able to empathize with myself, So that
Yes.
is the name of my sort of private company. But at the moment, I've put out a number there
Right.
that people can sort of contact me on, and then we
They
can talk.
they can get in touch if they want. And
Yes.
we'll have below this video our book us a counselor tab on our website that you can go right there. You can complete that form and it comes directly to myself. Felix, as we wind down, there's somebody said something here on YouTube, which I think is really true, that social conditioning and nationalism is a hard one to get past. And I think that is so true. When we've been conditioned around a certain thing, when we've been conditioned to do things a certain way, then it's very difficult to break that. And once again, because I speak mostly in churches, one gentleman said to me, he said, "We didn't need this when we were growing up. Why do you think we need it now?" And I said, "Yeah, why did we didn't need it?"
I think for me, I've heard people saying that what you're trying to do, actually, you are taking us back because we survived. But I think when
Mm,
we go back to my opening sort of slides, I was talking about the danger that actually we perceive. Let me just bring up this other slide. So most of our parents, they grew up in this sort of red circle, whereby what they've been doing all along, it's helped them. They were always perceiving threats, either being criticized, being seen as weak, having to work extra hard. You go to work, a black man has to work extra hard in order to get promotion. And even when you are in that job, sometimes other people finish work and go home because you always think that actually maybe you need to prove yourself, which is the blue circle here, whereby we have to be striving a lot. This is what our parents did. We hardly saw them as children because they will be here. But why are we bringing it now? We are realizing that we need to shift away from wanting to survive and thriving to kind of start nurturing this green side, whereby we need also to relax. Just like the animals, when they escape danger, they sit down, they relax, they eat, they replenish. Our brains need to rest in order to sort of replenish them and sort of be able to think progressively and be able to reach out to our children. Even if we look at creation itself, God is not a human being. God is not somebody who gets tired. But God realized that actually after 7 days of creation, he needed to sit down, relax. So he has kind of shown us an example. So we can go back to those individuals and say, yes, then all we knew was we needed to be strong, we needed to thrive all the time. But now that actually we realize that there is this other third aspect whereby we can sit down and enjoy ourselves. Why not try this and see how it impacts us?
I think that's wonderful, Felix. And I mean, the circle Felix is highlighting is self safeness, kindness, soothing, calming, and resting. Why not try that and see how it works? And I think that's a nice thing to end on, even as we think about looking after our well-being. Um, find places that are safe and kind and soothing and calming to help us as we are breaking generational cycles and trying to manage our mental health so that we're not waiting until it's in acute stages before we do something about it. So I encourage men to do it for yourselves, do it for yourself, do it for your family, do it for the gifts and talents that you have that the world needs to benefit from. And if you're a woman here and you're listening to it now or watching the replay, I would say get help for your sons early. Don't reason it out or wait until it's too late before you get support. One of the things I often see, Felix, when I speak, sometimes I speak on people, they're doing all-night prayer meetings or prayer meetings, and they'll come and ask me to speak on mental health. And in the prayer requests are always a lot of prayer requests. Pray for my children, pray for my son who has, who is sometimes they're using they're in a their addictions are involved. And we know that sometimes people use addictions as a way of coping. So get help for your children early. Find therapists that you are aligned with in your values. But whatever you do, don't reason it out and stay and wait until it's too long before you get help. Any final thing you'd like to say, Felix?
What I would like to say is that there is help out there, Joanne.
Yes.
And also, what we need to do is maybe as families, especially moms and even dads, we need really to sort of help our children and even ourselves to familiarize with a number of emotions that we experience, because sometimes we want children to be happy, and
Yes.
uh, it feels like any other emotions are not okay. If a child comes and say they are happy, we celebrate that. Moms too. But we need to help our children to be in tune with a number of emotions. There are a lot of resources. If you go online and just put feelings wheels, and then you will see a number of emotions. Talk through the emotions with your children, and don't just wait until they are struggling to talk about emotions. Even when they come from school and say, I'm excited, I've been selected to be in the choir or this and that, show the connection. Okay, this is what happens. Somebody acknowledges you or gets you in the choir, you feel excited. So they have the connection. What if you were not chosen? How would you have felt? What do you think your other friends
Mm.
who wanted to be in the choir who didn't make it? How do you think they felt? Sad, angry, so that children are aware of these different emotions. This works even for children with neurodevelopmental needs, because sometimes people will say, I can't teach my child because they've either got autism or anything. Every child given a right environment, every woman, every man given a safe space or a right environment, everybody is able to change. If a thief could change on the cross on the 11th hour, it shows that actually there is a hope for me and you to change. So this is what I'm leaving out for people there. And again, remember, if you are working in whatever country you are, especially if you are in UK, men, you have already paid for that help. But what is left is for you just to avail yourself to receive that help, because the taxes that you pay, they go to fund the NHS. So other people will use your taxes to get better, and you are going to continue being unwell. At whose expense? At our expense. So let's change the way we approach life. Let's put ourselves first for a change and see
Mm.
how that works. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Felix. Look at the feelings wheel and start to practice it at home in conversations with your family. Thank you for those who have joined us live and for those who are watching the replay. We appreciate you. Thank you for subscribing to our channel. If you haven't yet subscribed, please subscribe and share it with those who you know will benefit from this information. I'm going to be here every week for the rest of the year to do live presentations like this, sometimes on my own and sometimes with other guests, talking about really